Hello and welcome to the show. Welcome to CAD Live. And today we are going to be discussing seduction and what seduction actually is, or at least what seduction is in the sense that Robert Greene means it in his book, The Art of Seduction. Because if you remember, I've got some notes here. If you remember from yesterday, what I'm going to be doing in some of the shows going forward is going through The Art of Seduction by Robert Greene, the fantastic book on, well, as it says, seduction and the art of seduction, I suppose, the art of persuasion, the art of getting people to like you or getting people to do the things that you want to do. Obviously, a particular emphasis here on dating and sex and romance, but I have to make the point that this actually covers much wider ground than that. Certainly the book does. We'll talk about that in a minute. So today, I'm going to be talking about the preface to the book and how Robert Greene sets out his stall for this book about seduction, what he's going to be talking about, what we're going to be talking about in episodes going forward. And I suppose critically, how he defines seduction, what we actually mean when we're talking about seduction. And this is a different take from the old, like the PUA type thing. This is a different take. This is a more considered meta take on this subject matter. And what you're going to discover as we get into this and throughout this series of talks on this subject matter, what you're going to discover is this stuff is really actionable. And if you take it on board, this is going to really supercharge your dating results in 2021 and beyond, because this stuff is absolutely key. And I tell you what, we've got a humdinger of a show. Even today, even just talking about the preface, there's so much interesting stuff to pull out here. This is what makes Robert Greene's book so fascinating, so valuable. And that's exactly why I wanted to do a series about the art of seduction. Now, if you're just tuning in on the live stream, thanks very much for coming. Welcome. Please put your comments and questions into the chat, as always. If you're watching this on the replay, again, thanks very much for joining me. And I hope that you get a ton of value out of this. Now, I just want to make the point. I'm not going to be doing this every day. I'm not going to be talking about these things. I'm not going to be talking about The Art of Seduction by Robert Greene every single day. We'll have some days off. We'll get some guests on. We'll talk about some different stuff. But it is something that I want to create some content on going forward because, as I said, I think it's such a fantastic book. If this is new to you, by the way, you need to watch yesterday's episode because I introduced the series in yesterday's episode and I said why I was doing it and everything. So we don't need to recap except to say that The Art of Seduction by Robert Greene is one of the best books actually on dating skills, dating dynamics, social dynamics out there. It really, really is that good. It's up there with things like Influence by Cialdini. It's up there. People always say you should read The Mystery Method, you should read The Game, of course, so on and so forth. I mean, I would say that The Art of Seduction by Robert Greene is equal to those at least. It's certainly up there with things like Greene's other books, like The 48 Laws of Power and The Strategies of War. So you should absolutely be reading The Art of Seduction if you haven't already read it. But as I say, it's a higher level sort of book. It's not like a granular say this, do that sort of book in terms of pickup. And so what I want to do through this series is really just to sort of break it down for you and kind of like bring it to life a little bit, hopefully through my own experience and, way of looking at it. So listen, the first thing is, so how does the book start off? Okay. So Robert Greene opens the book and sets out his stall about seduction. And the first thing that he mentions is power and physical violence. So we get off to quite a good start. He's talking about power and physical violence. And what he says is, thousands of years ago, power was mostly gained through physical violence and maintained with brute strength. Okay. So years and years ago, all that you needed to do was to be strong, to be powerful, and in having those things, you would get your way. You would get what you wanted to get, okay? And then he starts to talk about how seduction was predominantly a feminine entity. It was a feminine, female thing, okay? Because women traditionally didn't have a great deal of power within society hundreds and thousands of years ago. Okay. And so the leverage that they had was predominantly through their sexuality and their sexual expression, okay, and the control of that sexuality and sexual expression, because men, of course, desired beautiful women. They desired to get with these attractive girls. I'm going to take this off, actually, a bit hot. They desired to get with these women, and if women just went along with that and gave up the ghost, as it were, then their power was lost, because once the guy had slept with the woman, then his desire for her would lessen. It wouldn't necessarily just go away entirely, but it would lessen. And so women figured out, this is Greene's thesis, women figured out that their lever of control, their lever of leverage, if you like, was their ability to essentially withhold sex, or at least to pull a man in and then push him away again. Okay, push pull. Right, and that's something that we talk about in the dating arena a lot, and we'll go into that later. But women realized that their agency, their leverage, was based in their ability to effectively control the supply of sexuality. Okay, and so this was a predominantly very, very female thing, because guys were just meatheads who would just go around and use brute force and whatever. But women had to be more subtle. Women had to leverage what you might call now soft skills, I suppose, but predominantly around this field of like relationships, sex, etc. Okay, and guys didn't really pay any attention to the, or they paid attention because they were met with it when they went into the courting arena, as it was called then. But guys didn't really take a great interest in it themselves until around the 17th century, and it was in the 17th century that you got the great famous seducers, and some of the foremost of those were people like Don Juan, and then later on, of course, Casanova. Now, Don Juan, who was based on a number of different Spanish figures and then coalesced into this one literary figure of Don Juan, began to use seduction skills learned from women, essentially, on women themselves in order to achieve intimacy with women. Okay, so it's really interesting, and this is something that gets talked about a lot in the dating and game arena, right? That actually the game skills that people have, the game skills that people study, are pretty much all just things that women do that guys can then also do in order to gain their own leverage in the dating marketplace. Okay, so as I say, it was around 17th century that guys learned about this, and they started to take it on board themselves. They started to use these similar techniques, these similar modes of behavior, in order to get a better deal in the dating marketplace for themselves. So Rai says, I didn't get a notification. He was watching Avi live. Sorry about that. I'm not sure why that happened. And Adam, welcome to the stream. As usual, says greetings from South Florida. Hello, sir. Good to see you. Yeah, so it was this feminized thing that guys got wise to and started to utilize themselves. And what's interesting is that Robert Greene says that seducers were often somewhat androgynous in nature. And that's the case. There was a certain feminized energy about figures like Don Juan and even Casanova. And certainly later on in the book, Greene goes on to talk about figures like Valentino, the actor, who was actually quite a feminized sort of a character. And this immediately is interesting because it's one of the things that pushes back on the stereotypical, very macho, very alpha, in inverted commas, sense of what you're meant to be like as a guy in order to get success with women. And in fact, actually, the original seducers often were quite androgynous in some ways. Not fully androgynous. I'm not saying they were going around wearing female clothing or something like that, but they were somewhat androgynous. They were somewhat attached to the feminine, let's say, because, as I say, after all, seduction itself was a feminine skill set. So I just put that there as a placeholder at the moment. Do with it what you will, but I'm just making that point. That's a point that Greene makes in the book. Okay. And it was recognized that seduction was actually a skill set. You know, it was recognized that seduction was not easy. That seduction was something that required effort. Ninon de L'Enclos, a great seducer, said, much more genius is required to seduce than to command armies. Okay, so it's not that this is just some brainless kind of easy thing. This is actually quite a difficult skill set that you need to either luckily have naturally, or that you need to acquire. Okay, in tandem with guys like Don Juan starting to use this skill set in order to get with women, guys were also starting to use it politically as well, because the feudal system was starting to recede in Europe, and in its place you were getting the system of courtiers. You were getting the courtly system. Okay, and men in the court, in the king's court, recognized that they needed to use soft power in order to get the outcomes that they wanted to get. Okay, so this same sort of seductive toolkit was being used for political ends within the courts across Europe, as well as in the interests of having sex. Okay, so that's another interesting thing. And what we find as we go through this book is that Greene is really at pains to say, look, this isn't all about sex. This isn't all about getting laid. It is about that, of course, predominantly, but it's not all about that, because in politics, you need this stuff as well. And he then goes on to make the point that, look, in today's day and age, right, violence is pretty much proscribed. Okay, not entirely, but fundamentally, we live in civilized societies, and so therefore violence is not the done thing. It's not like back in primordial days where if you just had a bigger army or you just had more brute force, you could get your way and that will be it. It doesn't work like that anymore. It doesn't work like that in politics. It doesn't work like that in business. It doesn't work like that. Certainly it doesn't work like that in relationships. Okay, so you need something else. All right, you need something else, and the something else is the seductive skill set. And this is why men had to start to take this on, because force and physical force and physical violence was no longer appropriate. It was no longer relevant. It didn't work anymore. Okay, and so charisma was required. And Robert Greene, who's obviously a big fan of JFK, because he talks about JFK quite extensively later in the book, says, look, politicians, certainly since John F. Kennedy, have absolutely needed to have that charisma in order to sell their ideas to the public, in order to sell their ideas within their own party, in order to affect the kind of change that they wanted to affect. And I mean, listen, there are so many examples today of politicians who have that charisma, and that ability to move people, that ability to affect the lives of thousands of millions of people. And of course, no need to refer to what's happening in the United States of America at the moment, but we can see how this works on a global scale. Okay, so charisma has been, and seductive skills, and they're not quite synonymous, but they're getting there in terms of synonymousness. Those things are now absolutely required in multiple areas in life. It's not just about sex, although, you know, I don't blame you if you want it to be mainly about sex as far as we're talking about it here, but it is, it's just required across the board. So if you've got any questions about this, you've got any like comments or anything you want to say, or even if you've got something off topic, then just whack it in the chat and we'll deal with it. But as I say, we're just currently discussing seduction and what seduction means as far as Robert Greene's concerned in The Art of Seduction. He then makes the point that the word seduction is drawn from the Latin to lead astray. Okay, and it's alongside a similar root to a word like sedition, which is being used a lot at the moment. You know, seduction, it's that pulling somebody astray, it's that leading somebody astray. Okay, so there is certainly within the word a sense of getting somebody to do something that may not have been what they originally wanted to do. Okay, that is using, and this is not in a sort of a malicious way necessarily, but it's using your skill set to persuade. Okay, it's using your skill set to lead somebody from a path that perhaps they were going to take to a different path. And of course, like anything, that can be used for good or for ill. Okay, seductive skills, charisma skills can be used both for good and for bad. In themselves, they're just skills. How you use it is down to the individual and the circumstances, but that's the root of the term anyway. He then goes on to say, and this will please the lurkers from the Black Pill community. He then goes on actually to talk about looks and to say that it's not all about looks, guys. He says, this is Robert Greene. He says, to have such power, that is seductive power, does not require a total transformation in your character or any kind of physical improvement in looks. Well, that's lucky, isn't it? Seduction is a game of psychology, not beauty, and it is within the grasp of any person, he says here, to become a master of the game. All that is required is you look at the world differently through the eyes of the seducer. And that's a really, really interesting point, okay? He's talking about, he's saying it's not all about looks. It's not all about, physicality, how you come across, anything like that. It's predominantly about how you look at the world. And he makes this distinction between people who are seducers, who look at the world in one way, and people who are normies, who don't look at the world in that same way. And what he's saying is, if you shift your mindset so that you start looking at the world like a seducer, then that's going to stand you in good stead. And this is something I found really interesting. And I think is really, really cool. He says, seducers have a warrior's outlook on life. Okay, a warrior's outlook on life. They see each person as a kind of walled castle to which they are laying siege. Seduction is a process of penetration, initially penetrating the target's mind, their first point of defense. Once seducers have penetrated the mind, making the target fantasize them, it is easy to lower resistance and create physical contact. Okay, so fascinating stuff. The seducer here is compared with the warrior. Okay, and it's interesting. He uses somewhat high flow language sometimes in this book, and he uses language in a way that I think now wouldn't be regarded as politically correct. But listen, he didn't actually write, this wasn't written that long ago. It was written, 10, 15 years ago or something like that. So it's not that old. Some of the way that he uses language, it was written in 2003, actually. No, actually 2001. Some of the way that he uses the language in here, I think would not be particularly welcomed by the woke brigade, let's say. But I don't think that he's actually using it particularly in any sort of nefarious way. I think that he uses, or he co-opts the language of battle. He co-opts the language of war to write this. And that's fascinating to me, because this idea about the seducer, the lover, being the warrior, having that warrior's outlook, this is something that I 100% had when I was younger, and I was going out into the streets of London, and I was doing that game. I was doing that approaching. I was going to those clubs. I was having all of those crazy experiences, right? You have to develop that sort of warrior's mindset. You are on a special mission. You are not a normie. You are not a normal guy. You are undercover. You are on a mission. Okay. And it's almost like a military operation. And you are there to, you have an outcome that you want to achieve, and you're standing there, and then you've got the world standing over here, and you have to go onto that essentially battlefield, the battlefield of the dating marketplace. Because remember, the dating marketplace can be a brutal place. It can be a harsh place, and you have to go out there like the warrior, and you have to do battle. Okay. And I really like the way that he encapsulates that in that line in this book. because it's funny. I mean, on the one hand, he characterizes seduction as being a feminine skill set, but then on the other hand, now he's talking about it as being the purview of the warrior. So fantastic stuff. Let's have a look at the comments. Okay, so Jared, we're going to have to block you, mate, I'm afraid. Troy Francis with a video camera. You don't have that. You're going RSD on us. We're high room to run. This video has to be unedited live camera. Well, that's what my infields are. So Jared was asking me about infields yesterday. Jared said, Brian, you need to cold approach 100 women in one day with a closing rate of 35 girls in places like Mumbai, Stockholm, London, Buenos Aires, Berlin, Sydney, Beverly Hills. So why do I have to do that? I don't have to do anything. I don't have to do anything you said. This guy yesterday came onto the comments and he was basically saying, "Oh, Troy, why have you got any infields?" And I posted a link to my infield collection, and I said, "Here you go." And then he came back and he started banging on about he just ignored the fact that I posted the infields and that was it. And now he's saying, because somebody else he follows has done a video where the guy approached 100 women in a day, he's saying I have to do that. Why do I have to do that? I don't have to do anything. It's up to me. It's up to me what I put on my YouTube channel. You can, if you don't want to watch, you don't have to watch. I don't have to do anything. You know, I had infields on this channel before, and then I took them down for various reasons. I don't have to do what some other dude has done. You know, maybe at some point this year we'll start to put the infields back. Watch this space. In the meantime, I've given you the link. All of those infields are filmed with a live camera in London because my cameraman lives here. There's a bunch more on the hard drive that I share with guys who are in my Patreon group. So the infields are there, man. You know, I mean, let's see your infields. Let's see your infields if you're so good. I don't have to do what some other random dude does. Why should I? You know, it's up to me what I put on my YouTube channel. But the infields are there. If anybody wants to see them, I'll whack the link in again later. But mate, I'm sorry, but I'm gonna have to block you now because I've given you the link to the infields, and you're just parroting the same stuff that doesn't make any sense because I put a load of infields out there. So what do you want? You know. And anyway, this show is not actually about infields. It's not about day game. This is about the art of seduction by Robert Greene. So you know, and equally, we could say, where's Robert Greene's infields? How dare he write this bloody book? Where's his infields? I don't see any Robert Greene infields. What a scam! I mean, these people, it's just ridiculous. But listen, what I'll do. Hold on a second. Now, so if you guys want to have a look, then you can. And as I say, there's a load more. There's a load more in the can as well, which I share when I do CAD Academy, and I share when I do. I share when I do my Patreon groups as well, and we will be putting out another collection at some point. And listen, maybe I will put some stuff. Maybe I will put some stuff back on here, but I don't have to do it. I mean, it would actually. Here's the thing, right? It would actually be better for my marketing if I did, and I'm aware of that. I'm very aware of that, but it's it's not that sort of channel, right? I'm not that sort of a guy who I'm like, hey guys, look at this. I was at a supermarket and I got talking to this Latvian blonde in 5 minutes, and it's not that kind of channel. If it ever was, it's not that kind of channel. So, so there you go. But anyway, if you go there, you can see the infields. Let's have a look and see if there's anything else. Ubik says, of course, Mystery got very good conversation skills too and keeping the frame very well. You don't have to have typical masculine physicality. You can learn, discuss traits. And listen, I get into trouble if I say this because I sometimes say, look, guys don't have to be built. You don't have to be massive. You don't have to be yoked in order to get girls. And then I'll always get some guy on Twitter who'll come back and say, You're just saying that because you want to get big and you're not massive, so that's why you're saying it. And look, I mean, if you want to get massive, if you want to get huge, do it. That's fine. I don't care. I'm not arguing against that. My point is that actually, and John MLD's made this point as well, when you look at examples of what women actually really like, if you look at like the K-pop bands and you look at things like you look at advertising of men aimed at women, you'll see that often actually women respond very well to guys who are pretty lean and pretty cut, shredded, okay, but lean, right? Not really big. And so this notion of the 2D alpha, where it's like, right, you've got to fit that stereotype. You've got to be that jack dude. And if you're not, then you're tossed by the wayside, is not the case. It's certainly not the case in Europe. Now, I do accept that there may be some cultural difference in parts of the United States. But even then, I've been out in New York and I've been out in Vegas and stuff like that. And even then, I think that the svelte kind of lean look actually does very well in many cases. But anyway, let's not conflate that with being feminine, because that's not, obviously they're two different things. You can be lean and extremely masculine. So it's not about being feminized. But I suppose the overall point here is that you don't have to, you don't have to be some roids driven meathead in order to be successful. It really, really doesn't work like that. Showing receipts means nothing to these black pillars. Well, this is the thing, right? I mean, you show the receipts, you show the receipts, and then they just ignore it and just carry on. And it's like, it doesn't make any sense. What else have we got? All right, so Gary says, every date is leading to a friend zone because I'm too scared to make a move. I can approach easily, but I can't sexually escalate on dates. Okay, well, look, that is something that you need to get used to doing. You've got to up the ante, okay? You've got to move things on to the next stage, and she's not going to do it for you. That's the harsh reality. In most cases, anything can happen, but in most cases, she's not going to do it for you, okay? You are the one who has to push things forward. And it is tricky. It is difficult. It is difficult. And sometimes you'll feel nervous. Sometimes you'll feel nervous about doing it because you won't know if it's the right time, or you'll think, is this a little bit too forward? Is she going to think I'm creepy or whatever? You aren't always going to know the right time. Sometimes you just have to take that leap of faith, and you have to make it clear. You have to escalate, okay? And that could be, touching. It could be saying, okay, how about we go and have some drinks at my place? It's upping the ante, but you've just got to do it. I know that doesn't, maybe that sounds like a cop-out, but ultimately, it's like jumping out of a plane. You're either going to jump out of the plane with a parachute or not. There's no prevarication around it. And in the end, you just kind of have to screw up the courage and just do it, okay? But the more that you do it, the easier you're going to find it, because you're going to get more calibrated, and you're going to realize that it's okay. The sky's not going to fall in unless you're doing anything weird and creepy. And I, of course, don't condone that. But on a normal interaction or on a normal date, and it depends when you're talking about dates as well. Okay, so here's the thing, right? You're talking about dates. Now, when she comes out on a date, I'm not saying it's of course, it's not a sure thing at all. She's there to assess you. She's there to size you up, whatever. But she's out on the date with you. There's at least some interest there, okay? Because she's not going to come on the date with you unless there's at least potential that something may happen. Because why would she waste her time, right? We're all busy. We've all got lives. Girls don't really, unless you're doing some ridiculous sugar daddy kind of game, girls don't generally go and just randomly waste time going on dates with people if they don't see the potential of anything. Okay, so the very fact that she's on a date, you can be confident that there's at least the possibility that things could go further. Okay, and so then it's incumbent upon you to ensure that happens and to ensure that happens in a smooth way. Okay. And if you fail to do that, then more often than not, you're going to miss out on that particular girl. You're going to miss out on that particular interaction because she's not going to do that work for you. You have to do it. So I know that it's all very well for me to say, just do it, bro. But ultimately, you just have to be confident. You have to take that leap of faith. And your lack of confidence in doing it is going to undermine your chance, because if she sees that lack of confidence, she's going to think, well, hang on a minute, why is he not confident? Why is he not just like Chad, who just like is really confident, just moves things forwards, you know? So yeah, ultimately it's a question of taking that leap of faith and just going for it. Just going for it. Afro says, Jet, just kiss her. Absolutely. Smash the like button. Please do. Please give me a like. Give me a comment. Really, really helps. Backland Bob says, I click like and YouTube put dislike. Ooh, shot's getting weird. I doubled likes. It's fixed. Not getting notifications from you. YouTube nonsense. Well, you know, we do live in an age of, crackdowns and all the rest of it. I don't think I'm particularly saying anything outrageous on here, to be honest. But you know, there it is. So the show is always during the week. It's always 11:30 a.m. EST or thereabouts. 11:30. Sometimes it's 12 EST, but it's that sort of time, Monday to Friday. So tune in. The show should be going. I don't know why that would happen. The only thing with this one is I didn't actually trail it very early. I just kind of put it up. I didn't do a thumbnail for it because I was busy. So I don't know if that's affected it at all. But there's no tags on this one either, which is bad of me. I should have tagged it up and stuff. So yeah. But the show's on Monday to Friday anyway at that time. So tune in. Check I'm on. But I don't know why that's happening. Obviously, we're in a strange time at the moment with bat shadow banning and all that kind of stuff. So let's see. The Silver Bishop says, isn't it more about looking healthy than just being a mountain of muscles? Well, yeah, I would say so. I mean, listen, of course, I'm a certain body shape. I'm not Arnie in the 80s or the 90s. That's just a fact. So obviously I'm going to have a certain view on it. But that being said, you know, on a serious note, as John MLD says, look at the Korean pop stars, look at the K-pop stars, look at the male models that they put on in advertising and on the covers of magazines for girls to drool over. Look at male pop stars and boy band stars who are marketed at women. They don't tend to be these massive dudes. They really don't, you know, they tend to be relatively lean, in good shape, of course, and probably muscled, but they don't tend to be these huge guys. So take from that what you will. Of course, there are women. There are many women who are into very big guys, and I don't dispute that. But just use the evidence, look around you, and particularly, I mean, have a look around you in where you live, in your own society. Maybe it's different where you live, but from where I'm sitting, actually guys who are quite slender. I mean, if I go in London, if I go to the top, you know, clubs and restaurants and stuff like that, you get a lot of dudes who are, you know, they're in good shape, but they're not necessarily jacked. And those guys are with very beautiful women. So take from that what you will. But there's a lot of like this bro culture on the internet, which I think is informed by people's own perceptions that aren't necessarily always accurate. Afro says, I don't know if I don't think we did this one. Keno, touching during the date really helps. High-fiving, 100%. And then Bob says, a girl said she was anxious. I escalated, that is to say, move things forward. We hooked up. She needed me to make the move. Take the risk, fellas, play to win. 100%. 100%. Because you think that these girls are incredibly self-confident. You think that they are just like, oh, I'm cute, I'm hot, so whatever. The girls are all going to, you know, I'm sorted, there's no problem. Not necessarily the case. Girls can actually be very self-confident. They can be insecure, okay? And they don't like making the first move. We know that. We know that because girls don't generally approach. It's not they never approach, but it doesn't happen with anything like the frequency of guys approaching. So you've got to, it's incumbent upon you to be the one who makes that move, because, and she can, sometimes it can backfire because she can actually be disappointed that you didn't make that move because she wanted something to happen and you didn't make it happen. And then you've ruined it for both of you. So, you know, you've got to play to win. Got to play to win. Ubik says, maybe try with an average girl first because you might feel nervous with good-looking girls. Yeah, it's true. Whatever gets you there. Brad Pitt in Troy or Fight Club is a good standard to aim at. 100%, man. 100%. I mean, you know, I don't think that you can get a better example really than Fight Club. I mean, that's a great lean physique. I think that's a good thing for guys to be aiming for. I mean, it looks good in clothes as well, right? That's the other thing. You know, you can wear a nice suit, you can wear a nice shirt, you could, you know, like it looks good, okay? And being sort of bulky doesn't necessarily. I mean, it depends. You know, I don't know. It depends what your taste is, I suppose. What your, you know, what the kind of look you want to go for. But yeah, I think it looks good. I think it looks good when guys are, they've got that lean kind of thing, and women like it. And this is the key thing. This is the key thing. Adam says, what age do you feel is appropriate for the youngest male viewer to be introduced to the RP community? Well, I don't know. 18? I mean, I guess younger, actually, really. I guess I was 16 or something like that, maybe. I mean, like, at what age do you think it would have been useful for you to have that sort of information? I personally think probably late teenage years. You know, maybe, I mean, arguably younger, but I'm not gonna make that case. But, you know, as basically, once you start to interact with women and you start to get burned by it a bit, then it's helpful to understand the underlying dynamics. But in terms of the stuff that I talk about, which is informed by Red Pill, but it's not, you know, I talk more about social dynamics really on this channel. Again, similar sort of age really, because you need to understand the underlying dynamics. And what Greene is saying at the beginning of that preface is that seduction, in the way that women used it initially, was very much about push and pull. It was very much about like, okay, I'm gonna give you a glimpse of something that's tantalizing, and then I'm gonna pull it away. You know, I'll give you that glimpse, and then I'm gonna pull it away. And that, in Greene's estimation, got the guys more excited, more keen to be with that particular woman. And then guys just copied that model and played it back against the women that they were seeking to get with. And I never understood that. I never understood that as a kid or as a young man. You know, I never got the whole push-pull thing. It had to be taught to me. I was always very like, well, just go up and tell her you like her, or just, you know, ask her out, and then if she's sort of lukewarm, just ask her again. Pursue. And the whole thing about flipping the script, because this is underlying it all, right? The whole thing about flipping the script and being like, well, actually, I'm the prize. Actually, I am the cool one here, and she should be vying for my attention. That was completely alien to me, really, until I suppose actually my early 20s. That became more of a feature of what I was doing, and it became a feature of what I was doing. Actually, when I was doing bar work, it wasn't because I'd read anything or, you know, I mean, there was no internet or anything at that point anyway. But when I was working in bars, I would leverage the social power that gave me, because I'm working a cool bar. I'm standing behind the bar. She's like, oh, that guy's cool because he works here. He must be cool. I would leverage that kind of power that I had. And then instinctively, the script kind of was flipped, because then I was acting like the big I am, and the girls were buying into it. And I started to get attraction doing that. Okay. So that was how I first, I suppose, got a glimpse of how the script can be flipped. But then the problem that I had was when I was off duty from the bar, when I was going out to clubs and things on my own, and I wasn't standing behind that bar in this cool venue, I had no idea what to do, because then it seemed to me that my value plummeted, because now I'm just some random guy in the bar, in the club, like every other guy in there. And then I was back to being underneath the girls again. Then I was back to, oh my God, she's so beautiful, and I'm just down here, and oh, can I please talk to you? Can I please kiss you, miss? I was back down to that level. And it took me a lot of time and studying this stuff to recognize that actually, if you go in with that mindset, you go in with that warrior mindset that Greene talks about in the art of seduction, and you go in with that assumed value, then the girl will buy into that. I thought you needed to have something else. I thought you needed to have something external, like I work in this cool place, or I suppose I've got these cool clothes, or I've got this car, or whatever. I thought you had to have something external, because I believed that my value, my inherent value, was not enough. When I flipped that script, and when I generated the mindset of the seducer, I guess, and I went out with the complete assurance in my own mind that I had huge value, I had greater value, actually, even than many of the girls that I was interacting with, then things started to change. And then I started to attract people to me, because now, all of a sudden, I wasn't on the wrong end of that spectrum. I wasn't on the wrong end of that value, lack of value spectrum, that seesaw. I was actually the one walking into the interaction as though I had the value. And here's the thing. As Tyler from RSD would say in something like the blueprint, right? Who's to say what value is anyway? Who's to say what being cool is anyway, right? It's subjective, okay? So she thinks that being cool is, I suppose today, having a bunch of Instagram followers, wearing certain clothes, buying certain brands, maybe going to certain destinations, whatever. She thinks those things are cool. But it doesn't mean that she's right. And it doesn't mean that that's an absolute. You have your own value system. You have your own determination of what is cool. And of course, you ace it in all categories because it's your system. So you walk up to her, and in your own estimation, you are the absolute boss across all categories. Now, she may agree, she may come to agree, or she may not agree, and that's her prerogative. But you don't walk into that interaction subordinate to her just because, you haven't got a blue check mark, or you're not a famous celebrity, right? Or whatever it is. You walk in laughing at those people, because who wastes their time on Instagram so much that they've got a blue check mark? Who's stupid enough to be a celebrity? Why do you want fame? Well, who wants? That's ridiculous. Who wants fame? Far better to be anonymous and make bank off crypto and have nobody know about it, right? So you walk into the interaction, you disdain her value system. You disdain whatever she thinks is cool. It doesn't matter. You are cool. You are where it's at. You are the one that is awesome, okay? And when you do that, when you get into the practice of doing that, what you'll find is that women will buy into that frame. People in general will start to buy into that frame. Now, not all of them, okay? And this is where I'm not making any massive claims. I'm not saying, yeah, just think you're awesome, bro, and, everybody's going to fall at your feet. Of course, it's not like that. Of course, this isn't universal. Some of them are going to disagree. Some of them are going to think you're an idiot. Well, guess what? Who cares? Right? It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter, okay? You need to have that unshakable self-belief. And what you will find is, yes, some people won't buy into that, but many will, okay? And remember, you only need a few yeses to have an amazing life, okay? In a whole night out, when we can go on nights out again, in a whole night out, you only need one yes to have had an amazing night. You only need one yes, okay? That's it. You don't need to convert every woman in the bar. You don't need every woman in the whole place to think you're amazing. It doesn't matter. You only need one, okay? So, yes, you are going to get rejections. Yes, you are going to have girls who think, well, this dude, what's with him? He hasn't got a blue check mark. Who does he think he is? Yes, you're going to get those women who think that. But if you have that attitude about yourself, you will also find that there will be some who buy into it. Okay, and those are the ones that you're concerned with. You're concerned with those girls who you meet who go, actually, yeah, you're right. You are pretty cool. You're right. I am being superficial, thinking about these dudes with the blue check marks. You are awesome. And that's what you're looking for. And that you will find, okay, if you do this and you put yourself out there enough. Now, look, again, I just want to make the point. I'm only using the blue check mark thing as an example, as a placeholder for a sort of externally measurable indicator of value, okay? I'm not... If you can get a blue check mark, get one. It's amazing. I'm just using that as an example, okay, of a sort of a superficial kind of idea of what worth value is, and how actually you as an individual, you don't have to buy into that, okay? You don't have to buy into those external indicators of value that everyone else buys into. You can have your own, and you hold those proudly. You hold those proudly, and if people don't agree with you, that's fine. But you don't have to buy into their frame, okay? Rizzo says, hi, guys. Hi, Rizzo. Good to see you. Bob says, any interest on lifestyle vids, hairstyle, stuff for the optics in game, 3-minute quick hits, nights out, maybe a new lane for 2021. I think I need to start putting out some shorter content again, because these streams are all very well, but obviously not everyone's got time to sit and watch this for an hour. So I'm certainly going to be doing some clips. I'm debating at the moment whether to put those on a separate clips channel or just put them on here, but I'll certainly do some shorter clips. And yes, I think you're right. I think some shorter videos again would be a good thing. I kind of got a little bit into this, doing this live streaming stuff, but the shorter videos I think would help for sure. So yeah, watch this space on that. Alex says your beta voice sounds like Jordan Peterson. Well, imagine Aaron Clary doing ballroom dancing. Hard to imagine. Yeah, Afro says great insight with regard to the value system frame, connecting busy, perfecting my own values. Yeah, you have your own values, right? I mean, there's no... Now, look, of course, it's more nuanced than that, because you also don't want to be a loser. I'm not saying be a fat loser and sit on the couch, and then your value system is, look at all you idiots going to the gym. I'm sitting on the couch and I'm a fat waster eating pizza, and that's awesome. I'm not saying that. Although, you know, to be honest, if that really was your vibe, you could probably make that work. But I'm not saying that. You do want to self-improve. You do want to be the best you can be, which is another one of those manosphere cliches. You do want to lose weight if you need to lose weight. You want to gain muscle if you need to gain muscle. You want to, you need to do all of that stuff for sure. You should be doing that stuff. But the point I'm making is, you don't have to buy into societal frame. You don't have to buy into other people's frame about what is cool and what is not. Even if she's a very hot girl, even if she's a 9 out of 10, it doesn't mean you have to buy into her frame and then consider that you failed because you haven't lived up to some stupid checklist that she's got. Why do you have to buy into her frame? Why do you have to buy into anyone's frame? You don't. That's the reality. Now, I'm not saying you'll get that girl. Well, fine. Things happen. That's life, whatever. But you don't have to buy into these people's value systems. I've had this before. I mean, I remember going out with a girl years ago in Birmingham. She was from Birmingham in England, and she was very she was very shallow about things like clothes, and she loved, she liked it when guys wore clothes with branding on it. She's like, Troy, it'd be really nice if you just got like a really nice Dolce & Gabbana t-shirt, because like all the guys down at the club, like down at Wobble, they all wear the D&G t-shirts. It's really stylish. And because I was an idiot at that time, I bought into that and I thought, yeah, she's right. And so I ended up spending a lot of money and buying these, designer t-shirts with Dolce & Gabbana written on them and stuff like that. And, I was thinking, yeah, she's right. She's right. Her value system. And this was a girl, by the way, that I was actually seeing, I was sleeping with. And, but because I sort of got a bit one eye to see, I felt that I had to buy into her frame of what was cool and what wasn't cool. And so I'm buying these t-shirts and trying to be the person that she wanted to be. And then we broke up and, whatever afterwards. And I remember talking to another girl and the other girl was like, well, that's just really tacky. That's just like, who wears those t-shirts? That's just really that's not really stylish, And this is the thing. People have different value systems. People have different ideas about what is cool, about what brings you status and what doesn't. All right. And, there was no need for me to have bought into that girl's value system if I didn't want to. What I should have done was said to her, don't be stupid. What are you on about, you shallow little girl? That's ridiculous. I'm going to wear this shirt because I really like this shirt. And that would have been better. That would have stood me in better stead with her. Okay. We often feel, particularly when the girls are very attractive, when women are very attractive, we feel like, okay, I need to fall in line with what she thinks, because if I don't, and then we measure ourselves against the scale that we believe that she's put into place. And for a start, if we're talking about approaching, we don't always know what she thinks is cool, what she thinks is awesome anyway. So there's that. But even aside from that, even if she does measure you up on a certain scale and find you lacking, that doesn't mean she's right. It doesn't mean you should go, oh my God, I failed as a human being because this one random woman who happens to be physically attractive thinks that I should have been wearing Dolce & Gabbana t-shirts. It's like, what? It's like you need to push back. Not in a rude way, not in a sort of aggressive way, but you need to be pushing back on people's expectations of what you should be and what you shouldn't be. It's like, and that, ironically, that's going to make you more attractive. Okay. Now, I knew Nash was going to say something. I make a point not to display branding. I can see MLD doing the exact opposite, displaying value. I think it's all about context in the end of what you're trying to achieve. I knew someone would mention MLD and I've actually spoken with MLD about this. I've actually spoken with MLD about this before on live stream or in his webinars. I mean, I'm these days I'm somewhat on the fence about it, because MLD says that you wear branded stuff and he gets more attention when he wears branded stuff. And to be honest, that's why I used to wear more branded stuff back in the day, for that same reason, because the reality of the matter is that a lot of people are pretty superficial. And so you wear something branded and it's like a shortcut, and and they look at it, they're like, oh, he's wearing that branded thing. And, it's a shortcut to being cool. So I do get that it works. And actually, you might even see me wearing some branded t-shirts on here at some point. So I'm not completely averse to it. Again, I was kind of using that as an example of the sort of externalization of status that other people can seek to put onto you, and that you can feel that you should buy into, and you don't have to buy into it, right? If you're somebody who's just like, well, actually, I just wear plain shirts all the time because I think this is cooler. And I believe, because of my value system, that wearing branded clothing is silly and superficial and, whatever, then stick with that. What I'm saying is you don't have to fall into other people's frames, is essentially it. Never take a woman's word too serious, just use the muse mastery. Yes, absolutely. He says, hi, author. When will you have a new book? Well, hopefully very soon. I'm going to start working on one this week. So, yeah, hopefully soon, but watch this space. Fantastic Brum accent. All right, Troy, you really need to get that one of them D&G T-shirts. They're really nice. They're, like, really stylish, etc. She was quite cute, though. Back on Bob says, create a new channel in addition to this, get supers. Well, yes. are you going to upload new podcasts on Apple? Yes, I am. I've been a bit remiss with that as well. So yeah, in fact, I was gonna upload the Aaron Clary interview actually. So watch this space for that. The weather is shit. I can't do any day game. Any tips? Well, there's that, and also we're in a lockdown scenario as well. So I would say that really, ultimately, I mean, you might. It depends where you are. I know a guy in London who's doing some approaches, and it seems to be going okay. But I would say that really, you need to be focusing on the online stuff at the moment, because we are in a lockdown situation, and obviously that has an effect on things. So it's and the weather's rubbish. It's all, there's no good news at the moment. I love it, Troy's accent, but what I love is when Troy sings. Well, maybe we'll do a song before the end of the show. But anyway, just going back to the book, going back to the art of seduction. Robert Greene, so he said this thing about seducers having this warrior's outlook, okay, which I think is important, and I think that's something that I've certainly had, and certainly guys that I've known who've been very successful in this field. Because remember, I'm not claiming here to be the world's greatest at this or anything like that. A lot of what I talk about also is about other people that I've observed and guys that I've been friends with and hung around with and stuff like that. And the guys who I've hung around with and spent time with who are very, very good at this stuff, they've all tended to have that warrior mindset. They've all tended to have that persistence, that like, right, we're going to do this or die trying, that kind of mindset, okay? So I think it's really important. And it's interesting that Robert Greene makes this point. But then he goes on to talk about how seducers are outward looking, so they don't tend to get very insecure because they focus on the other people. They focus on those they are looking to seduce, and they learn about those people, and they try to they look for chinks in the armor. Okay, so they're outward looking, and this is one of the most important, I think, and interesting parts of the chapter is he basically says seducers don't feel the need to be themselves, okay? And seduction is amoral. And these are two things that I bang on about really the whole time. This is kind of what Cat Academy is based on, and it's what a lot of my Twitter's based on. And I get into a lot of, not trouble, but, I get flamed by tradcons and moralists for this. But Robert Greene encapsulates it really well here in this chapter. So I'll read this section. This is a slightly longer quote. He goes, "A seducer sees all of life as theatre, everyone as an actor. Most people feel that they have constricted roles in life, which can make them unhappy. Seducers, on the other hand, can be anyone and can assume many roles. Okay, they can be anyone and they can assume many roles." And he says the archetype is the god Zeus, an insatiable seducer of young maidens. What a cad. Whose main weapon was the ability to assume the form of whatever person or animal would most appeal to his victim. Seducers take pleasure in performing and are not weighed down by their identity or some need to be themselves or to be natural. Okay, well, this is interesting, isn't it? This is interesting. So, this is like the whole thing of like, just be yourself. Robert Greene's saying the opposite. Robert Greene's saying be artificial. Robert Greene is saying this is about theatre. This is about performance. And I'm fully on board with this. Now, again, let's be nuanced here. I'm not saying pretend you've got a Lambo. I'm not saying pretend that you're a millionaire, that you've got a penthouse suite or whatever. I'm not saying that. But there is a performative element to seduction, particularly in the initial stages. That is to say, in the first interaction, when you're in the club, when you're in the bar, whatever, and in the initial bit when you guys are first together, when you're first dating, or if you are friends with benefits or whatever it is, right? You want there to be an element of mystery. There's an element of performance in those early stages, and it's not just you. The girls are doing it as well. Okay, girls are doing it as well. Girls put on a character. When a girl puts on a character when she's first dating, and then if you see her for a length of time, you'll realize actually she wasn't quite that character. It's not that she was pretending to be someone she wasn't, but it is that she was turning up the dial on certain elements of her personality, and you need to do the same thing. Okay. He goes on. This freedom of theirs, the seducers, this fluidity in body and spirit, is what makes them attractive. Okay, that fluidity makes them attractive. What people lack in life is not more reality, but illusion, fantasy, and play. Because let's face it, people are bored, right? Girls are bored, right? They don't want more reality. They don't want some boring chode. They want something more. They want something more exciting. They want illusion, fantasy, play. The clothes that seducers wear. Maybe not that. The clothes that seducers wear, the places they take you to, their words and actions are slightly heightened, not overly theatrical, but with a delightful edge of unreality, as if the two of you were living out a piece of fiction or were characters in a film. Seduction is a kind of theater in real life, the meeting of illusion and reality. Okay, the meeting of illusion and reality. And when I've been out and about and I've been at my height in this stuff and meeting these different girls and having this promiscuous lifestyle, it's always seemed to me that there's an air of unreality about it, that I'm playing a character of a certain type. I'm not lying about myself. I'm not pretending to be a multimillionaire. I'm not saying that I'm a hedge fund manager or I've got a private jet, but I am playing a somewhat heightened version of myself, because if you spend a lot of time with me, like everybody else, I'm pretty damn boring. You know, I like to get up, I cook something to eat, I go to the loo, I go for a walk down the street, whatever, right? So you need to get away from that prosaic self that you have. You need to get away from that prosaic identity, and you need to heighten yourself somewhat to the level of unreality. Now, a great example of this would be Tristan Tate. So I met Tristan. Now, the Tates are their own self-created fantasy figures, right? Aren't they? You know, you look at their Instagram, you look at their Twitter, you look at their YouTube, whatever, right? I mean, they are their own self-created characters. Okay. Now, I've met both of them. I met Tristan last year. We had some cigars and we were chatting, and he's a nice guy. And I'm sure that day to day, he's a pretty regular guy. I'm sure that he gets up and has a coffee and, you know, whatever, like everybody else. But he is, to some degree, and I'm sure he won't mind me saying this, he's to some degree playing a character, certainly when he's interacting with women. And I've seen him interacting with women, and he's very good. And he's not lying about himself. He's not pretending to be someone else, but he is certainly leveraging the fluidity of his persona. That is to say, he's upping the ante of the mystery. And particularly for somebody like that, because he's traveling, he's going to different places, he's doing all this crazy stuff. Girls are fascinated with that. They can't pin him down, okay? It's not that he has this singular identity and it's like, right, he works in accounts and he's got a good 401k and blah, blah, blah. You need to get away from that. You need to get away from that boring stuff, right? You've got to be something of a fantasy figure for her, at least in those initial stages. Later on, you know, yeah, you let the guard down a bit. But at the beginning, you need to be that fantasy figure. And this is what Robert Greene is talking about here. Talks about the clothes. Seduction is a kind of theater in real life, the meeting of illusion and reality. And then he says, finally, seducers are completely amoral in their approach to life. Oh, my God. And have the trad-cons like rolling over on the floor. Oh, my God. How can they be completely amoral? What about Donald Trump, our savior? He's so moral. Why can't they be like him? No, he says, seducers are completely amoral in their approach to life. It is all a game, an arena for play. It's all a game. Knowing that the moralists, the crabbed, repressed types who croak about the evils of the seducer, most of these are on Twitter, secretly envy their power, they do not concern themselves with other people's opinions. They do not deal in moral judgments. Nothing could be less seductive. Okay, moral judgments, moralism, it's not sexy, guys. It's not sexy, right? You know, it may get you a load of likes on Twitter, but it's not sexy. It's not making, it's not turning her on. Okay. And Greene is very clear here. He says the seducer is completely amoral in his approach to life. Now, you may not like that. That may not sound very attractive. That may not sound very nice to you. But, you know, if you want to influence people, if you want to get things done, then you've got to be realistic. And of course, all of Greene's books really are amoral. Well, maybe Mastery's not, I don't know. But I mean, certainly 48 Laws of Power and this one and the War Strategies one, they are amoral in the sense that, and that's not to say immoral. That's not to say they're setting out to do something bad, but it's just that morality, they don't what's the word? They don't really take morality into account as part of the equation. Okay, morality is there, it's a thing, but what Greene is saying, and what he says in this book and his other books, in my mind, is that he's looking at what's effective, he's looking at what's pragmatic, he's looking at what works. Okay, and morality is not a key consideration. Okay, and it shouldn't be for the seducer. It isn't for the seducer. And then he says seduction is a form of deception, but people want to be led astray. And of course, that's true, isn't it? Because, like we said, the girl is bored in the main. Her life may look cool on Instagram. Her life in the stories may look awesome. But in the main, she's kind of bored, particularly at the moment. But no, even if she's in Dubai, she's kind of bored because we're all a bit bored, right? In the sense that we all want spectacle. We all want to see something exciting. We all want something new, something different. We all want to feel like we're alive before we die. Okay, so the girl is bored as well as you are. And so she doesn't want you to be the boring normie. She doesn't want you to be like this kind of crabbed moralist that he talks about. She wants you to be the fantasy figure. And this is why people like the Tates do very well. Because, obviously they've got their physicality and their looks and stuff. But beyond that, it's the fantasy. It's the fantasy that they're selling, and you've got to think when you're putting yourself out there in that dating marketplace, what am I bringing to the party here? Am I just a boring normie, right? And if you are, well, I'm not saying, that you're not going to you're going to get no success, but are you going to get the stellar heights of success that you could be getting? The stellar heights of success that a gentleman like John Modern Life Dating gets. Sex party time. It's always a sex party with MLD. I'm sorry to hear about the second lockdown, though. That is bad. That is not good. So, yeah, you've got to be that fantasy figure. And don't be a moralist, okay? Like, as I say, you've got all these trad cons on Twitter and stuff. You might get some likes from other dudes, but it's not turning the girls on, right? It's not going to help you get the girls, as Mr. Clary would say, right? So, be amoral. Be fluid, be somewhat fluid in your presentation. Don't be tied to this one sense of yourself of like, oh, I'm this kind of dude. I'm this kind of guy. I'm just a simple guy who likes the countryside, right? Why do you have to have that one identity? Why do you have to be tied down to that one thing? You don't. You can be whatever you want to be, okay? And the seducer is somewhat amorphous, all right? And this is what Greene is saying in here. So this is a fascinating chapter. Fascinating stuff. Somewhat controversial stuff as well, actually. Really, like I say, like with all of Greene's books, he's not sugarcoating this. This isn't like a sort of feel-good guide to like, oh my God, just be yourself and be really nice. This is kind of down and dirty, but that's what makes it so good, okay? Because there are few writers who are as honest as Robert Greene and as clear-sighted as Robert Greene and as willing to just tell it like it is as Robert Greene. And that's what makes this book so valuable and so useful. So there's loads and loads of great stuff in here, even just in that preface, okay? So in the next show, when we cover this, we're going to be going more into some of the archetypes, some of the archetypes of the different types of seducers. And tomorrow we're going to have Jack Napier on here. And he's kind of keen to talk a bit more about this. So we'll start going into some of the different archetypes of seducers, and we'll have a chat about, maybe where you come into this, and maybe you'll start to recognize yourself as an archetype, or you'll see an archetype and you'll think, well, maybe I can become a bit more like that, like the rake or the dandy or the star or the charismatic or whatever it is. He's got a whole list of them. So we'll be going into that more in the forthcoming episode. As I say, tomorrow we've got Jack Napier on, so we'll be chatting to him as well. John, we're doing the Art of Seduction by Robert Greene. We're doing a breakdown of the Art of Seduction by Robert Greene in the next few episodes, so it's all fun. Okay, so let's have a look at the comments. If your body's on point, there's really no need to wear high-end brands. Thank you, Alex. I assume that's a compliment for me. High value plus charisma game, both are fine. One is enough by itself. Well, yeah. I mean, ideally, you want to have a bit of both, but yes, absolutely. James says, in 10 years' time, you'll be seducing the 30-somethings, or maybe you already are. Can you pick up 18, 19-year-olds now? I think it would depend, perhaps, where I was and where she was from and everything else like that. But I think that that's eminently possible for a guy, even into his 40s. I certainly know guys who are doing that. So yeah, I don't think that's a big problem. But I mean, as you get older, your tastes broaden somewhat, and dating into the early 30s is not a terrible thing by any means. But really, I mean, all of the girls that I've dated have been in their 20s. Really, I've dated a little bit into the early 30s, but in general, it's 20s, and that's always been the case. At some point, I'm sure that will have to move up a little bit, but the point is that if you keep yourself in decent nick, then you can, as a guy, you can keep going for a long period of time, because our shelf life is longer, as you probably know by now. So just bear that in mind. Maurizio Zanfanti, the Italian Lothario, dubbed the Romeo of Rimini, the rimming Romeo of Rimini, bedded 6,000 women while having sex with a 23-year-old tourist. You can keep going. Well, this is the thing. We are the canaries in the coal mine. How long can you keep going for? I mean, perhaps indefinitely. It depends. You need to keep yourself in shape. You need to make sure your money's right and all of that. But yeah, I mean, guys do have a very long shelf life. A skinny boy with small muscles says, in this state of affairs, have the more ideal places to meet and shut up women changed? Asking for myself. Well, I think at the moment, it's online, isn't it? It's online. You just got to accept it. It's online. Certainly night game in most places has died a death at the moment. Day game depends where you are, but yeah, it's all about online really at the moment. Is London still in tier 5 lockdown? I don't know if they've called it tier 5, but the whole country's now in a lockdown, which means that the bars, clubs, restaurants, cafes are closed. Non-essential shops are closed. You can get takeout, stuff like that. There's people are walking around and things, but all the fun stuff is closed, basically, unfortunately. Do you think the cold approach is regarded as low value for the female? Do you mean a guy cold approaching or the female cold approaching? James says, check out The Psychology of Selling, Cialdini 7 Principles, good stuff. Yes, absolutely. Cialdini is great. We should probably do a show about that at some point. Certainly something Tom Torero covered in the past, Cialdini's influence. Troy, Baker's Online. Good to see you, man. London's just entered tier 5, 50,000. It's good for you to write the new book about the art of locking down. Absolutely. A guy cold approaching. No, not really. Not really. If you bring value, then because it's like the old thing. If Leonardo DiCaprio approach, he's not going to think it's low value, right? So the art of the cold approach in itself, the act of the cold approach in itself, is not low value. If you're low value, it's going to look low value, but in itself, no, I don't believe it's low value. Indeed. So look, okay, let's leave it for now because I've got to go and grab some food. I'll do another call actually with somebody, but I hope you got some value from this. I think this book is fantastic. We're going to get loads of great material out of this, actionable stuff as well. This isn't just a boring, dry kind of like book club type thing. This is like, what are the actionable things that we can get out of this book? Okay. And I may also start to do a series of articles about this as well, because I'm taking advantage of this as much for myself as anybody else, because I've read this a couple of times, I've listened to the audiobook, but I want to really internalize some of the principles in this. So I might start to publish these as some articles as well, where we summarize some of this stuff. So look out for that. I'll have a think about it. I'll let you know. But anyway, In the meantime, please do hit subscribe to the channel, hit the notifications bell so you're notified, hopefully, when these live streams and videos come up. Give me a comment, give me a like, all of that good stuff. Tickle the algorithm so we can grow the audience, grow the channel. Get on my free daily email list. There's a link to that below, where I'm sending out a little article every day about different aspects of dating and game. And grab Renegade Dating Blueprint as well, which is my collection of 11 books about all of this stuff. You can get it for just $39. There is a link below. And yeah, that's it for now. But I hope to see you guys again tomorrow when we're going to have Jack Napier on, and we'll be delving more into the world of seduction. I'll see you guys again very soon. Thanks everybody for tuning in, by the way. Farhan, James, Nash, Daya, Suleiman the Magnificent, Baker's Online. Who else do we have? John MLD, Mr. Mark Zolo. Thank you for tuning in. Vanity Evolved, Adam, all of you guys. Alex Schmidt. Thank you so much for tuning in. It's much appreciated. Much love to all of you, and I will see you guys again